Gun shop employees, what are some red flags that have caused you to deny a sale of a firearm? I used to work in a large outdoors retailer. I had a man come in for a gun that refused to give me his ID. Also didn't want to give me his name, address, date of birth, or any other info. He said he should just be able to answer the questions on the background check, and that should be all I needed. Sale denied. Next story. Finally, one I can answer. I was living in Alaska for a year and picked up a part-time job in the winter as a gun counter clerk at a national sporting goods chain. One slow evening, a kid comes in, by kid I'm talking college-aged, and starts staring into the pistol case. I ask him if he wants to see one and that I'd need his ID to verify his age, etc. All's going well. It's obvious he's new to guns. I ask him what his intended purpose and use was in order to find out what might suit his needs. He says he wants a cowboy-style gun, and all he wants to do is go shooting to let off steam. That his mom teases him for always being on the computer and growing up a coward. The more I talked to him, the more I realized he was just a closet weeboo / otaku. My brother's a full-on weeboo, so I told the kid about how they had a big group of friends who met once a year during AX or Comic-Con SD. Kid was straight up starry-eyed, told me he wishes he knew people like that if he had friends like that, he wouldn't have bipolar issues. In the end, I told the kid not to buy a gun, save up his money, and get the F out of Alaska. I swear I've not had a happier customer. Dude didn't even buy anything. Okay, excuse my ignorance here, but what is a weeboo or otaku? Are those like native tribes to Alaska or something? I don't know. I'm confused. Next story. Already posted one here, but another doozy was sketchy bloke comes in and wants to look at lever action shotguns. Before this thing's even left my hands, he's smashing the lever as hard and fast as he can. I asked him to not do that and had to explain to a grown man why it's not okay to roughly handle a brand new anything that you haven't bought. He's got one of those 5-year-old kids he keeps interrupting us talking because he wanted to hold the gun. I turn my back to double-check the price, and when I turn around, I'm looking down the barrel of the shotgun the father has handed to his kid, and I hear the click of him dry-firing at me. Ripped it out of this kid's hand and told the dad to get the F out and starts abusing me because I hurt his kid's hand when I pulled the shotgun away. Having his kid dry fire a shotgun in my face isn't that big of a deal, apparently. Next story. Former gun shop employee here. An automatic ejection from the store was when the customer asked which kind of firearm is effective for harming or killing people. I've personally called the police on a few sketchy buyers. All came through with having warrants or issues. My boss didn't take this kind of crap lightly. We had short team meetings every week to ensure everyone understood what goes on. He was an excellent boss. Next story. We get lots of people who use us for transfers. They buy online and then the gun comes to us and we handle the background check. One guy had done a transfer with us previously and I got a bad feeling about him. Nothing concrete, he just bugged me. A few weeks later, he called again for another transfer. The gun was coming from Alaska, so I told him it was going to take a bit longer than usual and I'd call him as soon as it arrived. The next day, he called wanting to know if I had a tracking number yet. I didn't. The Alaska FFL only did business by mail. How the hell a letter was supposed to get to Alaska overnight? I know not. Again, I told him to be patient. Fast forward a week and he calls me 3 times. He lets slip that the dealer in Alaska won't talk to him and he needs me to be the go-between. That's a red flag. Sellers normally communicate with buyers. He was acting really sketchy and impatient, so I had decided to deny the sale. So I called the dealer because this was getting sketchy. The dealer told me he canceled the sale. Interesting. Never had that happen before. The dealer said, and I'm quoting here, "That guy is a serial killer in the making. He'd harass the dealer several times a day, starting on the day he ordered the gun. The dealer said the guy knew the sale was canceled because he told him and refunded his money. That settled it for me. I wasn't interested in handling any transfers for him. When I finally blocked his phone number, 2 days after talking to the dealer, I had 35 missed calls from him." Next story. I like it when they make it obvious for me and hopefully joke about shooting at schools/protesters. It happens more than you would think. Also, don't send your friend you were browsing with to try and buy the exact same firearm that you wanted 15 minutes after I told you I couldn't sell to you. Next story. Our range rents out firearms for trap/skeet shooting. I had a lady come in asking strange questions like, does it hurt if someone gets shot with it? And also acted weird when she answered a call and told the person that she was at a coffee shop. She left and we called the cops to file a report of a suspicious person. Yeah, if there is ever like a token textbook definition of a sketchy suspicious person, that would be it. Shopping in a gun store but telling person on the other line you're at a coffee shop? I don't think so. Next story. Paperwork accuracy is a big issue. It has to be 100%. If your government-issued ID doesn't match the info you put on a form and you don't have any of the allowed supporting information, then no gun sales to you. Had one guy come in only with the title to his car. No government-issued photo ID. He sprouted some BS about sovereign citizen, blah blah. We took his info and blacklisted him in the computer. We didn't want to be associated with that type of folks. We would also ask what the intended use was for and lead them with a certain hunting season. An example would be, okay, why do you need a .22 rifle? Going to hunt some deer? If they would answer yes, no gun. The .22 rifle, while capable to kill a deer, is not allowed in our state's hunting regulations, or any that I know of. Big red flag. We had a protocol that if we got strange customers, like folks asking for one bullet, it seemed like they were just trying to get any gun, making threatening statements, etc., we would make them fill out their section of the 4473 form, photocopy their ID, then deny the sale. This way we could involve law enforcement as needed. If we just told them no, you have nothing else than a crappy description and some security camera footage. The one that really sticks out is this guy who's in the course of small talk / feeling out the customer, asked if he could walk out with the gun that day. We told him that if the paperwork was acceptable and the background check came back as a proceed, then he would be able to. He follows up with a, good, now I can ice my female dog of a wife. We had him do the paperwork, copied his ID, and denied him right there. He was pissed, to say the least. He finally left. We called the cops, and they followed up with a wellness check. Turns out he was just a jerk, and still blacklisted him in the computer. Next story. Back when I used to work behind the counter, I had a guy who wouldn't stop sweeping customers and employees with the muzzle of firearms he asked to see. I warned him several times to stop. When he deliberately aimed it at a customer, I immediately took the pistol away and kicked him out of the store. That kind of unsafe behavior is something I won't tolerate, and I certainly denied sales back then, and I will deny training if I see it on the range now. Next story. I worked in a gun store for about a year and a half. Had a couple guys come in asking for cheap firearms. Okay, no big deal. People are on a budget. Been there. So they give me a price point of about $250. Again, no big deal. They want a handgun, not a revolver. Show them a used High Point, Canic, and a couple of cars and a Keltec. They ask me to disassemble to see the serial numbers. Kinda weird, but figured they just wanted to make sure the guns matched up or something like that. Then I overhear them talking about blacking out the serial number. Ask them why they want to black them out and if they know it's illegal. They say they wanted untraceable guns. Nope, told them to leave. Next story. Drugs. I had a guy come in one time with his family and wanted something cheap. He had all these track marks on his arms, scabs on his face, and he was really out of it. I did my best to tell him without making a fuss, and finally had to say something about the track marks in front of everyone. Not a good day for him. I guess he'd been telling his family they were from something else, and they believed him. Next story. I don't work in a gun shop, but I'm an avid collector and conduct private sales every so often. In my state, there's a couple of modest rules that have to be followed. You can't knowingly transfer to a prohibited person. You can't transfer across state lines. You can't transfer to a minor unless they're a family member. That kind of thing. Due to my state's proximity to Illinois and Chicago, and the relative ease of obtaining a carry license, the carry license has become kind of a stand-in for background checks that private sellers can't do. I ask for a driver's license to show residency, a carry permit to show this person would pass a 4473 background check if I ran one, then have them fill out a bill of sale basically saying, I promise I'm not a prohibited person. Any legit gun enthusiast can breeze through those requirements. People who get crappy about them set off red flags for me. This one dude super sketched me out, and I took some screen grabs of the conversation. Basically, he was from out of state and tried to cajole me into selling him an AK pattern rifle. After double and triple checking the relevant laws, I told him I wasn't comfortable with the private sale, but I'd be more than happy to go to a dealer and pay the transfer fee. It's legal to transfer to an out-of-state buyer if you do it through a dealer. We'd have met at a gun store and taken 10 minutes to do it. He wasn't happy with that. He sent this random gun collection picture, claiming to already own several machine guns. They weren't, so obviously he can't be a prohibited person. Then he tried the whatever, I'll just buy from someone else move, probably hoping I'd be in a hurry to sell. Never be in a hurry to sell. I bid him on his way. I maintain a no-sketch policy for sales. There's always another buyer out there who won't give you crap about basic-ass covering. A week later, the rifle sold to a completely normal dude with a valid permit who lived in the next country over. I think the guy was just an idiot, not a criminal straw buyer or an aspiring mass shooter. But when someone argues with you about the law and tries to pressure you into a sale, that's a red flag. Next story. Gun license photo in Australia. Looked nothing like him, and he couldn't tell me the name or birthday on the license. I asked because there was the lack of resemblance between him and the picture, and a big red flag when he picked up a rifle and pressed his eye hard into the scope to look through it. Just walked out with his head down when he was told we're keeping the lost/stolen gun license. Next story. I did front-end code for a lot of small firearm companies that used NFDN/Gearfire websites to sell guns online. You wouldn't believe the amount of successful fraud there was in purchasing $10,000 scopes. However, the worst customer that one of them told me about was a man who had murdered his girlfriend a few days after purchasing a gun. She, gun shop owner, unfortunately didn't see any red flags and lost her business over what happened. She was forced to close her investigation, but by the time the investigation was completed, she'd lost too much money and couldn't afford to keep paying the lease on her location. Next story. Worked at a large outdoor store in their firearms section. Had a customer come in and ask about a precision rifle, chambered in .338 Lapua. Then, while handing him his background paperwork, he asked, how far can this bullet hit a human-sized target? He said he was buying it for big game hunting. A little sketchy, I know. I gave him some answer. Oh, at least 1,000 yards, but I'll get a definite answer. Walked in back to find the manager, who was the only person who can deny a sale, explain what happened. Manager had him fill out paperwork and got his ID, then denied the sale immediately after. And the kicker was he used his Chinese passport with a student visa as his ID. Police were called and they took it to the FBI. Next story. Saying stupid stuff, avoiding conversation and eye contact, consulting their partner who they were hiding outside. Yes, we can see you out there. Some get by though. Husband and wife were looking for new turkey guns before the season. She came in later that week and picked up new hunting gear and shotgun. Walked to her car and unalived herself. Lots of bolo phone conversations with other shops. Being near a city kept us on our toes. I tried to copy as many IDs as possible. In New York, you can only handle handguns with a permit, so that reduced a lot of knuckleheads. Next story. Another one. This is when I was pretty new and just a lowly counterperson. This pumped-up dillhole comes in, glances in a case, and points out a Kimber. For those who don't know, these are rather expensive pistols. This was in the 2.5K range. Says he wants it. This is a straw. Purchase behavior. So I was on watch for strange behavior from him immediately. Upon pulling the gun from the case, I see the tag has been marked. We had a secret way of marking tags of guns someone has looked at if they demonstrate behavior that indicates they may send someone in for a straw purchase. I go to the back to grab the gun and tell my manager what's up. He starts to try to figure out why it's marked, seeing if we have any notes, while I go out to start paperwork. I give the guy the spiel. The paperwork needs to be filled out in an extremely precise manner, and he's rolling his eyes at me and making a show of ignoring me, telling me he has his own FFL and knows what he's doing. So he fills out the paperwork and I start looking it over. Mistakes everywhere. He put USA in the county field, didn't use caps in the state field, scribbled out mistakes without dating and initialing, checked a box that doesn't need to be checked unless you're an alien. I made him fix all those things and he kept telling me I'm stupid and don't know what I'm talking about, and he did it perfectly, but begrudgingly fixed the errors. I would have shut him down for being a jerk, but wanted to give my manager time to nail him for a straw purchase instead. Looking over his 4473 again, I notice his middle name is spelled Benjamin. I look at his ID, and it shows Benjamin. So I ask him how to spell his middle name, and he replies, "Can't you read, female dog?" I say that I can read, so well in fact, that I can see his name is spelled different on his paperwork than his driver's license. He says, "I don't know, I never use my middle name. Give me my ID, I'll fix it even though it doesn't matter." At this point, thankfully, my manager comes out. He's a big dude, probably 6'3" and 260 or so. He starts asking the guy about the gun, trying to determine whether it's a straw purchase. The guy gets defensive, says, "This dumb female dog's been trying to tell me she knows better than me since I got here. Now you're interrogating me?" I'd been taking this verbal abuse for the last half hour, and had enough. So I flung back, "This from a guy who can't spell his own middle name?" My manager gave me this wide-eyed, "Dude, not helping" look, and tried to calm the customer down, but it was too late. The guy reached over the counter like he was going to grab me and said, "You dumb idiot." He could immediately see that I went way too far from the look on the manager's face. He stopped, turned, and walked out. Manager followed him out the front door and stared him down until he drove out of the parking lot. Next story. In the times before the instant background check, we just took their word for it. The guy answered yes on the "have you been convicted of a felony" question. I told him he couldn't buy a gun. He asked for another form so he could answer no. I told him to leave and never come back. Either it was an ATF sting or he was too stupid to own a gun. Yep, my money is on the latter there. Moving on. Next story. Reverse situation. Knife dealer at a gun show and a guy wanted to trade a fairly unique handgun for knives. A little geeky, but no major red flags. No problem. He picked out his knives, which resulted in a good-sized stack of blades. Talking to him while bagging them, he says he wanted to trade the gun for knives because "I never get the chance to shoot people." I already had his info and reported him to local PD and had the gun checked. He came back clean, and so did the gun. In the end, just an odd fellow. Next story. 1. People saying or wanting several at a time and after questioning, figuring out they were intent on going to the gun show to sell them for way more than purchased for. The common thing was people would buy a $500 to $700 AR, then take it to a gun show and be able to sell it for $1,200 plus. This was during the Obama administration. 2. People not knowing what firearm they want, but being very general. Example, "See, I want a 9mm. Me. Okay, any particular brand? It doesn't matter to me. Okay, what price range are you in? Man, I don't care. I just need a gun. 3. People trying to buy for a friend, but try to say it's a gift. 4. People lying about their information. I'm sure some of the other gun sellers in here can help, but there's so many little things when it comes to dealing with people in the firearm industry. You learn how to read people, what questions to ask, and how to ask them. It's similar to when cops get a hunch and something ends up not being right. Happy to address any questions, concerns, etc. Thanks for reading. Next story. I work at a small shop on the Ohio River. When I say small, I mean it's the owner, his son, and me. That being said, we sell a lot of firearms because we have a decent section and the absolute best prices available to any customer. With us being so small, we all see pretty much every gun sale. We will personally refuse to sell to anyone one of the three of us finds sketchy at all. If you smell of weed or alcohol, no sale. If we know you from our small town somehow and you've got a violent reputation, no sale. The most common red flag I see is children coming in with an older friend to buy the gun for them. If you look remotely close to being under 21 at all, we ask for your ID if you're with someone attempting to purchase a firearm. We see 16 and 17-year-old kids come in with friends who are 21 to 24-ish that try to buy the gun for their younger friend. No sale that day or any for either of them. I don't care if 24-year-old comes back alone. No sale. If the younger friend turns 18, no sale. Sorry, bud. But if we feel it's not worth the risk, no screaming or crying or, "But Mom, Daddy lets me," is gonna change our minds. Next story. I worked behind the sporting goods counter at a Walmart. I can't remember exactly what made me think the guy was trying to buy for someone else, but the sale was suspicious. So I declined to sell him a long gun. He immediately got irate. He started yelling at me and slamming his fists against the counter, demanding that I hand him a gun. Sure, I'm going to hand the belligerent man a firearm. He demanded to speak to management, who escorted him out of the building. Satisfying ending there. "Oh, you want to speak to a manager? Absolutely, right this way." And manager immediately is like, "Bye." Next story. My favorite was Dean. I lived/worked in Washington State. We could still sell long guns to residents of a few other states, including Alaska. This guy comes in, strikes up a convo with our weird, smelly counter guy, fondly referred to as Dougie Fresh Breath, our resident cowboy, action weirdo. They bond over extremely exaggerated or outright bogus tales of times I bested a grizzly bear, and Dougie Fresh Breath starts paperwork. I was the manager, and already keeping an eye on the sale because the customer basically asked, "Oh, what's a good gun for hunting?" without offering any specifics like what or where he's hunting. Dougie handed him a rifle, and Guy basically looked it up and down and said he'd take it. He didn't ask any questions, shoulder it, or work the bolt at all. Classic straw purchase behavior. This guy fills out his paperwork, and at this point, I'm already sure I'm going to shut the sale down, but I proceed with the paperwork and check so we have him on file. Dougie calls me over after 4473 is complete and goes, Banger, how do I call this in? When I ask what he means, he points out that the guy only has one name, Dean. I look at his ID and sure enough, it only has one name on it. I ask if it's his first name or last name. He says yes. I ask if his name is Dean, and he said no, only one Dean. I explained that legally, every person in the U.S. has both a first and last name. He said, not in Alaska. After trying to explain, futilely, that Alaska is actually part of the United States, I gave in and told Dougie to call it in. He went in the back to make a call, then called me back because it didn't work. I took over, and hilarity ensued. Anyone who's ever called NICS can tell you that they aren't allowed to break their script, and you can predict what words come out of their mouth in what order for the entirety of the call. So when you violate the sacred rhythm of the call, things get uncomfortable. NICS operator. Last name? Me. Dean. D-E-A-N. First name? No first name. First name? He doesn't have a first name. What? That isn't a thing. He needs a first name. I told him that, but he insisted that's his full legal name. No, it isn't. He needs a first name. Yeah, I thought so. Please cancel the check. I'm going to shut this down. I go back out front and Dean was gone. He just left. I was livid at Dougie. Our policy was to take the customer's ID to the back when we called it in, and he hadn't, so I wasn't able to give it to the cops when he left. Anyway, that's the story of Dean with the fake ID. Next story. Demeanor is a big thing for me. If you walk in and are nervous, and most people are trying to suppress their excitement, then it's a big red flag for me. I have had people try to buy without the correct licenses in Massachusetts. Also, if you come in looking like you got your crap rocked, I've seen it a few times, and are asking to buy a cheap tactical firearm, then I'm showing you the door. Next story. Guy came in looking pretty ill. His face was bright red and he was sweating profusely while struggling to breathe. One of my employees was convinced he might start having a heart attack, so he asked if he was okay. This guy went ballistic and cussed him out for bothering him. One of the many insane things he yelled was, "What? You got something against red people?" My employee backed off and let us know that he was unhinged. He walked over to the gun counter and asked to see a revolver. He immediately pointed it at my formerly concerned employee and said, "I wonder if this would be good enough to put a bullet through the head of that nosy son of a bee." We had already been filled in by our plain-clothed loss prevention guy, who was now following him around after his outburst. When he made that threat, I didn't bother asking him to put the gun down. We have to assume the worst, so I took it from him. I couldn't risk giving him any chance to load it in case he was concealing ammunition. You never know. I started screaming that he was going to get a gun and kill us all. Our loss prevention didn't take kindly to that and attempted to physically restrain him until the police could arrive. It took 4 of us to hold that big bastard down. Needless to say, he was arrested for terroristic threats and assault. Next story. These are things I looked for. Someone being coached by a person they're with, or apparently over the phone, regarding the firearm or the purchase procedure. Someone lying about being a citizen, border state. Someone who looked wrong. Things like face tattoos and wearing the same color of clothing from head to foot. While those aren't illegal to do or have, I'm not selling to someone wearing a gangbanger's uniform. Anyone intoxicated. Anyone behaving in an odd way. Anyone who's apparently angry or in some kind of elevated emotional state. Wanting a firearm for a bullcrap reason, say trying to buy a 9mm handgun for hunting. Anyone who seems like they'll be blatantly unsafe or is immature. I think that about covers it. Next story. I run my own small shop and am thankful to be able to screen my own customers effectively. However, sometimes my license info gets entered automatically into large retailer databases who don't vet their customers and blindly drop ship me guns with no notice, dumping the responsibility on me. One case about a year ago, a major retailer I won't name did exactly this and also left out the packing slip by mistake, so I had no idea who the gun was for. I received the box during a particularly busy Friday late in the afternoon, and only had time to log the pertinence while I sorted out my existing appointments. I jotted down the note to call the retailer Monday morning, since I was leaving first thing 6 a.m. Saturday for a weekend trip. Monday morning, I come home to half a dozen messages on my answering machine, all from a very irate individual yelling incoherently into the phone from a millimeter away, demanding I give them their gun. After an hour of analyzing the contents of these voicemails, I pieced together that they had purchased this extremely high-quality, high-point carbine and expected it to be delivered directly to their door. No questions asked and involving no ID or background checks. I called the retailer, relayed the contents of the voicemails, got an apology, and promptly returned the gun to them on their dime. Then I called and attempted to speak to the would-be buyer, who was impossible to communicate with the belligerent beyond comprehension. I clearly informed them as politely as I could I declined their business, returned the gun to the retailer, and didn't want any future business from them. They uttered some choice words and hung up. But wait, there's more. The next morning, an hour before opening time, this person shows up banging on the door, demanding I give them their gun. Without getting into too much detail, they were asked to leave and only finally hightailed it when the threat of police involvement was raised. Every single thing about this was sketchy as hell, and I'm glad it's the only bad apple I've had in going on 10 years in the biz. Next story. I would help out on the weekends during gun shows or working the store. Two things I remember that made me go, nope. Two Hispanic guys came in the store and start browsing. Let them look around a bit and then ask if they need any help, so the one starts talking in Spanish to his buddy, who's translating. This goes on a minute before I ask who the gun is for. The guy translating this says it for him, but my suspicions are pretty high at this point, and he starts asking some more questions. He asks something about whether you can get high cap mags for one of them, and I say, I don't know, let me ask the owner. I go in the back and tell the owner what I think is going on, and he comes out and starts talking to them and asks who the gun is for. The guy translating says it's for his buddy, but he's buying it. Well, obviously that's a no-no, and the owner points out that fact, and he'd already told me it was for him. They were told to leave. I was working in a gun show, and you have to keep one ear on the person you're dealing with, the other on surrounding conversations, as well as making sure no one tries a snatch and grab. It's stressful at times, to say the least. We mostly deal in new guns and do custom work on them as well, but occasionally we take guns in on consignment. At this particular show, we only had one used gun, and it was a pristine King Cobra, but no box, and the guy wanted $1,600 for it. Not happening. So we're getting a lot of interest on the Cobra until we tell them it's a consignment and the seller didn't have the box and docs, and they'll look at it and say they'd give X amount of money, and we'd have to say the seller's firm, and that was it. But along came this one guy, and as bad as it sounds, how you dress and present yourself says a lot. The guy was a younger black guy, probably in his 20s, which isn't anything to draw flags until you take in the sagging pants, multiple red bandanas, tats, and excessively baggy clothing. Not saying he wasn't a gangbanger, but being in Atlanta, I won't say he wasn't either. But he starts asking about the Cobra because he heard me telling the previous guy it was used. Wanted to know if we had more used guns and if they required background checks. For starters, I have nothing against wanting a used gun. They're cheaper, and a lot of the time you can find guns of better quality than what you can find buying a new one in the similar price range. But if you start asking if it requires a background check, nah. Keep walking. Anything that goes through a dealer will require a background check. It isn't worth risking your business over not doing it. Of course, you always have to keep your eye out for people that smell of alcohol, weed, etc., are excessively impatient or move a ton. You pick up a lot of cues from behavior alone most of the time, and to prevent people from taking it the wrong way. I have nothing against weed. In fact, I'd love for it to be legalized and regulated like alcohol and tobacco, just to remove the stigma from it. What I have issues with is guns and any kind of drug do not mix. Period. If you're going out to a buddy's property to shoot guns, drink, maybe pass a joint around, do so after you've said guns and they're safely put up. Too many accidents happen because of poor/impaired decision-making abilities. Next story. I used to work in a big box store that sold guns, so not really a gun store, but still. And we got a fair amount of strange people. Weirdest that stood out to me is the woman who proudly and without prompt recounted her tale of being groped and shooting a man in the privates. A lot of people came by the gun counter and just wanted to shoot crap with us, pun intended. Had one or two gangbangers that came in and promptly left when they learned that there's a background check. Most people in there were pretty normal, though. Next story. I worked for the Mart a number of years selling guns. The most blatant red flag to me was just someone wanting a gun, but not an idea brand, model, or caliber that they wanted. In my 7 years of selling, all while NICS was running, I only ever had 2 denied background checks. One was a guy who had threatened his parents and had been arrested a few days before. He had just been released from jail and came straight to us. Came off as a normal guy, not a single red flag. The other was a guy who was excited he finally got to participate in deer gun season because his restraining order against his ex-wife is finally expired. I knew his ex-wife. They had settled their differences long ago and were on good terms, or so he thought. He was 2 days from the expiration date, actually, and the cops had to get involved in that. Truly felt bad for the guy. Next story. I just want to say thanks to I've Got a Blue Panda Idea for posting this question. I'm enjoying reading the comments and answering questions. The stuff you read in conversations in this question thread are often an every week, if not every day, occurrence for most big box or gun shop employees. Yes, even crazy stories for every one, there's at least 10 others who would make even the harshest critic say, wow, I'm glad you're able to help them out. No matter what side of the fence you're on, I hope everyone gets to see some of what we experience. The rules, which we have to know, follow, and be able to communicate understandably, and what all goes into purchasing a firearm. I can't speak for everyone, but in my personal experience in gun sales, you have to walk a fine line between running a business and selling firearms. We do have to tell people we can't sell them this product, but we have to do so in a way in which doesn't lose their business completely. Do we make good calls? Yes. Do we make bad calls? Yes. Thanks again for reading, and I'm happy to address any questions, concerns, complaints, or feedback. Next story. A guy showed up to pick up a gun without the proper proof of residency. I told him I couldn't release his gun, even though he'd waited the proper 10-day waiting period because of this. He started threatening me because he was missing his daughter's birthday for this. Goddamn parent of the year. Anyways, he started yelling and trying to grab both me and the firearm. Manager phoned the police. The man tried to come behind the counter and was shouting at the operator that he didn't consent to us calling the police because his voice was being illegally recorded. He cornered me behind the counter, at which point I drew my own gun and he started screaming to the operator that I was in fact threatening him with the gun. I've never seen cop cars move so fast. They were on site in 90 seconds. Anyways, gun stores are a pretty tight community, so after the police escorted him off the property, I canceled the entire sale, and we sent the man's info to the local gun stores with a story of the incident. He showed up the next day to try to pick up the gun, with the proper paperwork this time, and got livid when we informed him we canceled the sale. We gently reminded him that the police said that if they ever had to show up again, he was leaving in handcuffs, and he promptly left. 3 other gun stores called that day to tell us he attempted to buy a gun there that day, and spent his time in the store talking badly about our store. Anyways, a couple much less exciting times I also denied sales. One kid showed up with a medicinal marijuana card. Sorry kid, bye. Another guy brought a piece of mail from the state as proof of residence. Turns out this particular piece of mail was informing him of a warrant for his arrest as a result of failure to appear in court. Yeah. How about you don't get a gun? Next story. So there's a thing called a straw purchase. It's when an individual A can't legally purchase a firearm, so they get individual B to purchase it for them. I had several occurrences when a couple of people would come on together. One would lead the questions, then disappear as soon as the paperwork came out. That's a dead giveaway. Bonus. Once had a guy come in asking for a choppa. I had no idea what he meant until he said he was looking for an AK. First thing he asked was, "Can I kill someone with this?" I took it back, locked it up, told him that those were the magic words that mean you lose the chance to handle guns, and walked off. He tried to defend himself by saying, "I meant a pig." Next story. Straw purchases, when the purchaser of a firearm is not the actual person that the firearm is intended for. I've had people, mostly female significant others, come in with the person that's doing all the inquiries of the firearm, pointing out the firearm that they want and so forth. Then, when it comes time to start paperwork, the person that showed no interest in any firearm is the one who tries doing the paperwork. I clarified that the person who the firearm is intended for has to be the one who submits the paperwork and have a background check, otherwise it's a straw purchase. They then inevitably say that they're the intended end user of the firearm. I deny them and call around to the other shops in my area to let them know about the denied attempted straw purchase, because I've had several of the denied attempted purchasers say, quote, "I'm just going to purchase the gun from somewhere else," before. But also because I don't want people that aren't supposed to have guns getting their hands on them. If you're a felon or not legally in this country, you do not have my Second Amendment rights. Next story. I haven't had to deny anyone yet, but I came close once. Guy came in and mumbled about the Muslim scourge, but without skipping a beat, kept talking about collecting enough to be able to defend his home with a gun hidden within reach, no more than 5 steps away from everywhere in the house. It was obvious he was just paranoid, but defensively so, which is fine. Paranoid and wanting to go hunting for Muslims, on the other hand, and we would have had a problem. Relegated note. I got advice from our local ATF inspector that if I ever wanted to deny someone for a gut check reason, I was free to tell them their background check came back bad or delayed, even if it came back clean, just to keep it from looking like I was the one turning him away and prevent an escalation. She also said to call the ATF whenever that happened so they could follow up. This is why a lot of us tend to talk to the customers as much as possible, to get a better handle on their personality and see if there was something that gives us an instinctive gut check. Next story. Owner and operator of an internet sales-oriented firearms business, but I do sale in person/do FBCs for other FFLS in the area. I don't have any guidelines as to what I look for, aside from the federally mandated rules. I do, however, have gut feelings that will push me to deny a sale. If a customer comes in with bruises on their hands, I will deny a sale regardless if they pass a FBC. Bruises like this one are generally caused by physical violence, which is something I look for. Another sign is if they come in distraught, acting weary, or nervous. Again, even if they pass the FBC, I will deny a sale to them in most cases. Same goes for any physical or emotional signs of mental impairment. Had a man come in around 6 months ago looking to buy one of my rifles. He passed the FBC, no issues. Had a gut feeling that I should deny the sale, and did so. 3 days after, he was charged with domestic assault for beating his girlfriend to a pulp. I might have saved her life by denying the sale. There are other typical things, such as outward signs of drug or alcoholism. As an FFL, I have the right to deny service to anyone for any reason, and I try to be as fair as humanly possible. Will there be some that fall through the cracks? Yes. Will I feel responsible? Probably. Am I at fault if they pass a federal background check, then commit a crime with my firearm? No. Next story. I was a gun store manager for about 6 years, and I personally denied a few sales during that time. Nothing really exciting, just obvious straw purchases. The occasional person that appeared to be high or intoxicated, anytime anyone made any suspicious comments, or when there was anything suspicious about the sale. The gunsmith denied a sale once to a lady who wanted a gun because she said her neighbors were witches and were casting spells on her. That was the only one really worth monitoring specifically. Next story. I'm a new FFL holder and have denied 3 purchases so far. One was an obvious straw purchase. First guy asks a bunch of questions, finds what he wants, then when time to fill out the paperwork, second guy walks up. No sale. They weren't too happy, but oh well. Second guy was just odd. I couldn't get a read on him. Asked about assault rifles, then sniper rifles. Then, when he didn't have the money for that, he inquired about a used shotgun I had. He asked me how deadly it was and what it could be used for. I asked him a few questions to get a read on him, thought he was kind of sketchy, but he had a kid with him and seemed out together well enough. I politely told him that maybe he wasn't really in a position to buy yet. Maybe he should do a bit of research and find out what he was looking for before parting with any money. I told him that firearm ownership was a big responsibility, and if you don't really know what you're getting into, nor what you want, maybe you should hold off. Seemed nice enough about it once it was all said and done. He came back to me at a gun show a couple months later. I didn't remember him. Found out later that my wife did. He filled out his 4473 and I got back a delayed response. I politely told him it was delayed, but we treat that as a denial. Well within our rights to do that. Don't know if he went somewhere else, but we didn't sell to him. Third person was a young guy who wouldn't stop talking about how his boys were going to be so jelly when he pulls this out on the block. I got a bad feeling about him. Maybe it was his attitude. Maybe it was how he carried himself. He was by no means some badass, but he really wanted to be. I don't want to give a gun to someone like that. Next story. First gun shop I worked in, 2 guys came in. One dude was obviously foreign and the other was local. The foreign guy wants to buy a semi-auto WASR-10, like an AK variant, and I said sure, hand him the background form and he passes it over to the other guy. I asked why he couldn't fill it out, and he says, I'm not a US citizen. Nope. Put the rifle in the back and said, I'm not doing it. They asked to speak to the owner because one of the guys is an upstanding local businessman, and that was his business partner. I said I wouldn't sell the rifle and the other employees agreed with me, but the owner says, well, you could have. Nobody else would do the sale. The owner takes the rifle to his other store about 30 minutes away, and the local guy goes to pick it up there later. I quit about a week after that. For the record, I found out sometime later the foreign guy became a US citizen, but he wasn't at the time. Also, both of the shops owned by that guy are closed down. Next story. Guy had his dad hovering over him the whole time he was looking at the guns and doing the paperwork. Straw sales are what can get you in trouble the easiest, so I was super sketched out by this. Guy also kept having to ask his dad basic questions like address, social security number, etc. Was at Walmart, so I called my manager saying that the computer locked up and needed a manager to log in. Discreetly showed him what was going on and he denied it. Looking back, selling ARs was way too much pressure for minimum wage. Next story. I worked at a field and stream store in my late teens. We complied with the various laws and had quite a few store rules that we enforced as if they were laws. For example, if you wanted to hold any firearm from a display or behind the counter, we hold your ID. I imagine that our reasons for denying sales are pretty boring and straightforward, but here goes. Straw purchases, by far the most common. Basically, someone comes in and looks at guns, and another person with them tries to fill out paperwork. Sometimes someone would come in and really want a gun. Then a few days later, someone else would come in and specifically ask for that gun. If they couldn't answer questions about why they want that gun specifically, sale denied and blacklisted from all F&S nationwide. In most cases, we would also file police reports. You could tell when someone would constantly be on their cell phone or making multiple trips to the parking lot. The first thing out of their mouth is that they want a gun that day, the cheapest gun in the store regardless of brand or caliber. Super sketchy. We would ask them to leave. If they gave us an ID, we would file a police report. Many of these types would not give us ID. Answering the standard, why do you want this firearm, question incorrectly. If you say you want a 9mm pistol or rimfire rifle for hunting, that is a no sale and possibly an ejection depending on how you react. Incorrectly filling out paperwork. I can forgive misreading county for country on a 4473 form, but misspelling your name, street, or incorrectly writing your date of birth was an instant deny and blacklist. My best friend also worked there, and he had a guy answer yes to, have you ever been convicted of a felony? The police arrived before he left the store and he was arrested. Intoxicated people. This also includes people with obvious sores on their face or track marks on their arms or hands. Generally sketchy people, people with obvious gang affiliations, or people that ask about lethality in a sketchy way. If they're asking about home defense weapon and ask the right questions, like round penetration and noise, then I can understand. Asking about lethality alone is sketchy. Any weird behavior was treated with your best judgment. For example, someone being unsafe where their gun is pointed would have probably just be asked to leave, whereas someone that even jokes about homicide or self-unaliving would be ejected, blacklisted, and reported to the police. Generally being aggressive, this probably falls under sketchy people, but some people came in and it was obvious they had some sort of unresolved anger. This was handled case by case, but I did ask several people to leave. Thankfully, none of them escalated the situation. All in all, it was a good experience working there. I learned a lot and met some really cool people. Next story. Late to the party. I'm an FFL dealer that does mostly dealer-to-dealer transfers all over the country. Every now and then I get a phone call from a denied transferee who wants my company to intervene. We say polite and firm and defer to the receiving FFL. In reality, I wouldn't intervene with an FFL dealer's decision any more than I would intervene with NICS, the National Instant Check System. I once received a call from a gentleman who explained to me that he was having trouble picking up a handgun for his son. Understood. Handgun transfers have a few more rules than long gun, shotgun, and rifle, transfers, and very rarely, the transferring dealer is misinformed on the rules or state regs. And if this is the case, I'll ask the dealer to at least consider the transfer, but it's a soft sell and not one that I'm going to press. So I'm talking to this guy, and he's telling me that his son went in to pick up a handgun, and the dealer said he couldn't transfer it to him. He never mentioned a 4473, and I presume that the son was between 18 and 20, an age range where it's legal to outright own a long gun, but illegal to outright own a handgun. However, it is legal for a parent to have possession of the gun and give it to their kid. The kid just can't travel solo with the handgun in his possession. In a situation like this, it's quite understandable if the kid got turned away, and some, very few, dealers have a no questions asked policy where if someone is denied for any reason, no other person can pick up the gun. While on the outside edge of probability, it's a scenario that could definitely play out this way. Dad goes on to say that he went to the dealer to pick it up for his son, and the dealer denied him as well, and he wanted to know what we were going to do to remedy the situation. I talked to the man a little more and listened to what he was saying, and it all of a sudden clicked that something really wasn't right. Sir, how old is your son? He's 37. Takes a few seconds to figure out what the F to say or do, because this is ridiculous. Okay, then it sounds like he was denied the transfer by NICS, not the gun dealer specifically. We can't do anything to override something like that. The problem is my boy had this real female dog of an ex-wife, and it turns out this man's 37-year-old boy caught a domestic violence conviction, which disqualified him from owning a firearm, ever, and rightfully so. F that whole dysfunctional situation. I can't imagine how something like that could happen to someone so supported by his dad.